Well, I had served on council as a member of, as council at large for approximately 8 years when I made the decision to run for the first time in 2011. I knew at that point that if things were allowed to continue as they were, that we would be facing some far more serious issues now than we are actually facing. At that point in time, we had instituted a program of some debt restructuring. We had laid off some employees. We did some buybacks. We knew that we had to address some issues at the recreation center. A lot of the things that we were confronted with, though, we could not address under that administration. I knew, though, that someone needed to step forward and get control of things, and that's why I came forward. In that time, we have reversed the fortunes of the rec center. It's practically a break-even. We've practically tripled our cash reserves. We've reduced staffing. We've gotten to the point now where, but for some cuts in state funding, we would be practically balanced for this year. There is more work to be done. I know what that involves. I know how to do it. I feel I'm committed to getting this job completed, and therefore I'm stepping forward again a second time.
Okay, Mr. Jaros?
Yes, I'm an on-again, off-again resident of Seven Hills for some 56 years. My mom lives there, 91 years old. I have an aunt that's 95 that lives there. I think Seven Hills is a wonderful place. Always was, a little piece of the country, minutes from downtown. I got involved, ran for council actually in 2013, and was soundly defeated, but that was my own fault. The path, pardon me? Why? New to politics, didn't know how to run a campaign, timing bad on information I put out. I asked for it, I got it. Different this time. But looking at what's happening to the city, what has happened to the city, what continues to happen to the city, I attended council meetings. I started attending meetings in 2013. I've attended almost every meeting this year. And the path that Seven Hills seems to be headed down isn't a path that I think is sustainable. And there may be some dire effects coming out of this if things don't change. And I think I can affect changes that will have a positive impact on where the city's going, what the city looks like to the outside world, and so forth.
What about the mayor's statements that fortunes have changed considerably since he took over the rec center? He said, I think, nearly break even and cash reserves have tripled. Has there not been progress made in Seven Hills?
Apparently the rec center did make progress. The loss has been minimized there, but respectfully, the mayor was sat in a position to reduce the losses far long before he actually took office, and I think there could be work to be done there. I'm a hands-on type of guy, I always have been, and I think with further scrutiny that more might be able to be accomplished there.
What could he have done sooner?
I'm not in a position. I don't see numbers. I don't have details to know what could have been done, but losses that were consecutive in the $400,000 area magically dropped to $45,000 in the mayor's first term.
How'd you achieve that?
We rewrote the entire set of ordinances that control how the rec center is operated. We restructured all job positions so that all the employees now effectively ride a circuit through the rec center. So we were able to eliminate all but 2 full-time staff members. There are only 2 people there who are full-time. Everyone else is a part-time employee without benefits. We were able to attract university hospitals to invest in our recreation center. They operate a physical therapy unit there. That alone brings in about $65,000. We brought in some federal programs. We opened the rec center up to outside membership, particularly the city of Parma. Parma does not have a recreation center. We offer them a discount. We had to think outside the box. What was, I'm sorry, again, respectfully to Mr. Jaros, What he's referring to is I was one of 7 members of council. I had no more vote than anybody else in that room, even though I was the president of council at that time. So I have to respectfully disagree with him. When the Recreation Center was first proposed, it was indicated to the voters that they could anticipate and should anticipate a $250,000 annual loss there. With the cuts that I made in the last 3 years, that average and over the 13-year life of the Recreation Center is now down to $232,000. So if you spread it out over the 13-year life of the Recreation Center, I'm actually beating the projections that they were making back when they proposed it in 2000, 2001. And I'm beating it by a lot. This last year, 45,000 in losses. Last year, 23,000. So I've got it running pretty well. And I do admit that there are some things that we could be looking at to hopefully bring it in line. It should have never been built the way it was. There was no operating levy. I think they knew back then that had they proposed an operating levy, the voters would have not have supported it. Broadview Heights, for example, is proposing an operating levy for their recreation center because they understand that municipal recreation centers are notorious money losers.
So this was going to be a subsidized rec center from the get-go.
That was the plan, yes.
And will it ever get to, you feel like you can ever get it to the point where it's totally break even, or you think it will always be a little bit?
Last year I had it down to 23,000. I think I can do it with a couple more things. For example, I want to talk to university hospitals about a wellness program. Some of the hospitals in our area, for example, Akron General Hospital has a very substantial wellness program that they run in their facilities in Stowe, Green, and Fairlawn. They have equipment there, for example, where a member can get on an exercise bike, and by telemetry they can send readings to their physician who may be miles away. And so there's a lot of opportunities like that that we could explore now that UH is involved with us. I think we're just kind of scratching the surface at this point.
And just to check back, your operating loss in 2014 was 23,000.
In 2013 it was 23,000. In 2014 it was 45,000.
And in 2012 it was what?
2012 was about 72. But when I came into office, it was approaching 400,000.
And that was what year?
2011. The preceding
you came into office at the beginning of 2011.
December of 2011.
December.
Yeah. The preceding recreation director wanted an additional 65,000 on top of that 390 something, and I had to let him go. I just was not going to accept that.
Just to clarify, you said that the loss was 23,000 in 2013, and then it was a bigger loss.
It has to do with how you accrue for the numbers. You may be getting a bill in the preceding year that you don't get paid, that you don't pay until the following year.
Okay.
But effectively, I'm running it at about 10% of the subsidy is when I took office.
But I just wanted to, because originally I thought I heard you say last year it was 23,000,
No.
but that was actually 2013.
2013, it was about 20. Again, I'm rounding the number, but it was about 23. Last year was 45, as opposed to 400 in 2011.
Mr. Jaros, and by the way, I put a little story up online to solicit comments and questions from the public, and believe it or not, there's some really good ones in here. One of them has to do with deer. Is there a deer problem in Seven Hills, and if so, how do you propose dealing with it? How are the powers that be proposing to deal with it, and what would you do?
Well, my understanding is there's been a mayor's association that talked to the state, trying to get the state to come in and take some kind of active role in the control. I don't know if there's been any success with that, but the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, who should be the experts, say that the herd needs to be culled and reduced in number by some means. I personally would prefer it was a non-lethal means, but I don't think that the sterilization program is something that the city of Seven Hills could afford. I've talked to a number of people. Price varies wildly, $5 to $4,000 per deer to sterilize them. And unfortunately, we don't have the budget to take care of our streets, let alone put that kind of money into sterilizing a deer. I think that approach is probably not a sound one, because many people don't realize just how the Seven Hills deer arrive there. This is a very fluid, white-tailed deer are by nature deer that will go, animals that will go long distances foraging for food. The deer we see today may not be the deer we see tomorrow. There are a bunch of them that do hang out in backyards. My mom's backyard has 20 of them at any point in time. But it would take an effort of everybody in the surrounding communities, reaching all the way to the north to Cuyahoga Heights and Brooklyn, everywhere. You'd have to have the whole herd, a combined effort to try and sterilize these, and I don't know how effective that'd be.
So what do you suggest that be done? If you don't think the sterilization program will work because of the cost and because it would have to be so wide-ranging because of the, as you mentioned, the free-flowing foraging of the deer, what should Seven Hills do?
You have to concentrate on getting everybody around you and use a hope and a prayer and see some effect, but I don't see it happening in my lifetime, quite frankly.
A hope and a prayer?
That's about it.
Mayor Aquila, do you have a thought on that?
I certainly do. Some of the points that Mr. Jaros is making are actually correct. This is a regional issue. Obviously, deer do not recognize municipal boundaries. The Ohio Revised Code provides that the state of Ohio owns all wildlife in the state in trust for the people. Recognizing that, a group of mayors have been meeting with the ODNR since the beginning of the year. The ODNR is the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. They do not have a municipal urban nuisance program comparable to one that they have for agricultural purposes. Based on those meetings that we put together, the ODNR for the first time has put together a proposed nuisance permitting program for urbanized areas. And they've begun circulating a package to the various communities who have been involved in this. I can list you some of them, and I'm sorry if I leave some off. Seven Hills, Independence, North Royalton, Broadview Heights, Parma Heights, Brooklyn Heights, Strongsville, and I apologize if I've left someone off. But we've been meeting with the state of Ohio regularly on this topic.
You personally have been part of the meetings?
Yes. Yeah, we went to Columbus, and we met with them up here as well. ODNR is unwilling to do anything on their own to reduce the deer herd. In Ohio, birth control is not legal. It has been tried in other states. For example, I understand Minnesota has a program. In Ohio, they've been reluctant to implement it for fear that it would get into the food chain.
And when you say birth control, you mean the sterilization?
No, not sterilization,
okay.
Birth control.
There's something you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's difficult to implement. You have to track the animal. You have to make sure that they're being dosed regularly. But there is a pilot program now that ODNR is supervising just north of Cincinnati. So what we have done is we've asked ODNR to come up with a combined program that we feel, we combined mayors, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I feel, should be put before the voters.
And was this, when you say combined mayors, was this a specific group of mayors or was this Cuyahoga County mayors?
The ones I just listed.
Okay.
We on our own began doing this. So what?
Can I jump in and ask a question? Carol Lechnar, she was the head of the Deer Committee, and they recommended go hunting to full council. So is that resolution not going any further? Or would the voters get a chance to vote on something like that?
My feeling is that the voters should decide this issue. It is such a contentious issue. A lot of emotion. Mr. Jaros is correct. There's a lot of emotion involved with this, and I think clearly it should be something that should be presented to the voters. And I know some of the communities I just listed are actually in the process of putting that together. Well, for the first time, this is a package we received from the ODNR with all of the literature that they're proposing that we should consider along on a CD. For the first time, they are considering allowing what they're calling a municipal wildlife control permit, similar to what a farmer could use. If, for example, you own an apple orchard.
Is this what Avon Lake has already gotten? Because they
Have they?
They have sharpshooters going to certain parts of Avon Lake.
I think that might be a little bit different because we're not proposing, this doesn't involve sharpshooting. I know there are places where the sharpshooting is occurring. In the metro parks, for example, in the middle of the night, they don't make too much of it. But
This is on actual city property where they herd the deer, they hire the sharpshooters. Ironically, we're interviewing the Avon Lake mares tomorrow morning, and this is an issue in that mare's race.
I'd be interested to hear about that afterward, because
It's gotten news coverage.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that.
Cleveland.com.
Oh, what a thought.
Solon has a program where they're hunting them too,
Tens
don't
of
they?
thousands of dollars. Yeah, you're right, it's very expensive. What this would involve is if the voters would allow a one-time exception to our no hunting ordinance, what this would involve is if you could put, again, it's all in the proposal stage at this point. Council has to decide what and if it goes on the ballot, but I think it should go on the ballot. A combined hunting and sterilization and birth control program. What this would involve is if one could assemble 5 acres of contiguous land, they would then be permitted to apply to ODNR under this program for a permit. The chief of police then, the city police, would come out, examine the property for safety purposes, make sure that it's properly cordoned off. Then only a state-certified bow hunter would be permitted to come on the property and take off a certain number of deer from that property. They want to emphasize removal of does before bucks. Apparently, hunters want bucks before does because the antlers are prized. We don't have a whole lot of locations where we could put together 5 acres of land. We're 95% built out. I don't see where in our city you could effectively eliminate a deer with an arrow and count on it not running into some person's yard who isn't part of the program and watch the poor animal pass away in somebody's driveway. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of places in Seven Hills where it would work. There are probably a couple. But if we combine with all the communities around us, and this is where Mr. Jaros is correct, this is a regional question. This is something that has to be handled on a regional basis. There's no doubt that they are a problem. I have about a half-acre backyard. I get 14, 15, 16 deer at a time in my yard. My dogs roll around in the excrement. It's really a I don't want to get too graphic.
No.
My daughter's friend from college lives in Marietta, and she doesn't eat beef. I took her to Slyman's when they came to visit, and I asked her, "What'd you think about your corned beef sandwich?" "Oh, it was okay, but it was too beefy." So that tells you what I'm dealing with. They eat venison. They hunt. She told me when she was visiting that she saw more deer in our backyard than she sees in an entire hunting season in Marietta. So there's no doubt that we have a problem. I agree that I think I would prefer non-lethal measures. I don't know how effective that is, but I think definitely it needs to go to the voters to decide. It is such a contentious
So
issue.
the voters of Seven Hills decide to do it, but if the voters in your adjacent communities don't decide, then it's all for naught, right? I mean, it sounds like everybody has to kind of come to an agreement on this, right?
To a certain extent. Each community needs to make their own decision. If our residents make one decision, and let's say the residents of Parma make the opposite decision, then we would implement what our voters decide to do.
You just couldn't carry over, like if there's property that goes from Seven Hills into Parma where you'd want to do something, you couldn't cooperate.
No,
you could if both communities.
Right, or if it was all within one community, yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're headed. I can't speak for council, but this is the program that I'm about to introduce to them.
This is ODNR.
This is ODNR put this together.
What would it cost the people of Seven Hills?
Nothing. There's a permitting fee, and they're proposing $150, but that would be up to the voters to decide what they wanted to do.
And the venison, that would be.
My feeling is donate it, unless you want to keep it, but.
And you wouldn't discharge guns then, it would all be bow hunting.
Bow hunting. That's what it would make a one-time exception to the no hunting ordinance, that you could do this provided that the state of Ohio has issued this permit.
Why not do it with guns?
Oh gosh.
Just
we are
more chance for accidents.
We have folks living on quarter-acre lots in some parts of Seven Hills. That would be. I don't think you could do that. Just the chances of. And the other thing, the number of animals is unfair to them too. I was pulling out of my driveway the other day. I live on a very busy road. A little car drives by, it strikes a deer, the car drives on. The deer probably flew as high as maybe that sign over there, came down on its back, it's thrashing around on the sidewalk, obviously mortally wounded. It finally is able to right itself, and it crawled off somewhere where it probably died some miserable death. It's just not fair even to the animals. Something needs to be done, but it is, again, such a difficult issue. I think the voters have to make this call.
So are you going to recommend, I mean, are you going to wait till all of the mayors that you mentioned come up with a unified ask of their voters, or are you going to present this to council?
We have already done so. All of the mayors in those communities I just listed have gotten together, and we are, and again, it depends on what's going on in each individual community, but the idea is we would present this to our councils to get on a ballot sometime in the first half of next year, depending on, the scheduling, et cetera.
This information's been provided to council? The information you just showed us?
No, I have not introduced this yet, but this is where I want to go with this, yes.
Mr. Jaros, there's a question here from someone who commented to both candidates. It says, do you support or oppose a reduction in the residential income tax credit?
A reduction in the credit?
Yeah.
Or an increase in the credit? I mean, reducing the credit means you're raising the tax. You're paying more tax if you reduce the credit.
Okay. Then I suppose it would be, an increase.
An increase in the credit.
Could you do that? You're talking, this would apply to people who work there but don't live there. Is that right?
No, I think the reverse. Who live in the city but work outside the city, so they're paying a municipal tax elsewhere, and then they're paying a tax to the city of Seven.
And I think they reduced the credit. Okay, so if they reduce the credit, then that means more money would go to.
They pay more tax.
They pay more tax to the city of Cleveland.
Of Seven Hills. Right now, our tax is our credit is 1.1%. So if you reduce the credit, that means that they're getting a lower credit for what they paid to wherever they work. I think if I understand your question correctly.
Okay.
Is something like that on the table right now?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
I think what you're saying that so more money would go to Seven Hills.
You would get less credit for what you pay to the other community. Right now, you get an offset for what you pay. If for example, I work in Solon, and I pay tax there,
Right.
I get something of a credit in Seven Hills for the amount that I paid to Solon. It reduces my Seven Hills tax by whatever that amount is. I think if I understand your question, that's what they're getting at. I don't feel it needs to be adjusted either way.
There has been discussion of reducing that credit at caucus, actually. And you asked me if I'd support it. I wouldn't support giving the current administration any more money under any way, shape, or form. The city needs money, but the track record here isn't so good. I wouldn't vote for it. And the credit, you don't have to vote for it. That council does that unilaterally. Voters don't get any input on that, and it was discussed at caucus this past summer.
Road repairs. How much does Seven Hills spend a year on road repairs?
Who are you asking?
We'll start with you.
Okay. It's a combined number. We receive funding from the county. We obtain grant monies wherever we can. There are two separate funds from which roads are paid for. There's the street maintenance fund, from which this year we spent maybe $300,000-$400,000, and then we pay some out of our general fund. So in the last 2 years, all of those combined was about $3 million. We had a county project last year, Crossview and Ridgewood. Total last year was about 1.7. This year we got some grant money, some TIF money out of our, I don't know if you're familiar, but we have a nursing home coming in. We were able to pave a street, an entire street, with the TIF money that we pulled from the nursing home. We've had to be very creative. The one thing, again, I take some exception to what Mr. Jaros is saying here, but the one thing that is true is that money is very tight, and we've had to be very creative in how we pay for these things. We've been very active in seeking grant monies. For example, there's a mandatory sanitary sewer replacement project that we have to do to comply with EPA. Otherwise, we face some very substantial fines. The last project in our city is called the Hemlock Creek Sanitary Sewer Project. It's about an $8 million project. That project will require that we have to replace a number of streets because they're going to tear up the streets to replace those sewers. So for the last few years, we've been kind of shepherding those streets by putting in some minimal repairs, understanding that when this project comes to fruition, they're going to get torn up anyway. So this year, we were able to obtain a DOPWIC grant of $2.4 million for that project, which will reduce the cost by about 30%. That money will now go into replacing a half dozen or so streets that we didn't have the money previously to do. So we've been having, obviously we have issues, but we've been very creative in how we come up with funding. We've applied for another $150,000, for example, a block grant north of Rockside Road for some street repairs there. We're talking to the City of Independence. There's a street that a commercial street that runs off of Rockside called Lombardo Center. It's entirely within the city of Seven Hills with about a 12-foot devil strip that abuts the City of Independence. Well, Independence just acquired 60, 70 acres on the other side of the road, and they've approached us about putting in some connecting roads off of our street into their property. And we're telling them, it's fine with us, but we would like some contribution to the repair of that road. That's easily a $600,000-700,000 repair, and they have said that they would go to their council and help us with the repair of that road with their funds. So we've been very kind of, thinking all kinds of different ideas other than just coming out of the general fund to repair streets.
Several years ago, Seven Hills had a pilot project where it put in some
White topping.
Permeable concrete, aggregate into some of the Mary lanes. You know
Yes,
what I'm talking
yes,
about?
yes, I'm aware of that.
Where there was really severe flooding down
Mhm,
there,
mhm.
and so they took out some of the concrete, put in this permeable concrete, so the water wouldn't just flow over the concrete, but it would drip
Mhm.
down into through
Mhm.
the material.
Mhm.
And he did it another place too, on a court, and I forget where.
Our parking lot, our parking lot at City Hall is the same way. We call it the rain garden, but we did some investigating into an idea that has worked out very well, that allows us to filter the drainage that's coming off of vehicles, making it a little cleaner before you return it back into the environment, and yes, reducing the overall flow into the storm system.
Have you done that more around the streets, or were those few instances all that you did?
That was those were the only two locations that I can recall. We also put some trench drains in at Mary Lane because the water there was so dramatic.
Any complaint there?
No, it's worked out well.
Okay.
The Ohio EPA put a bunch of money into the municipal parking lot at City Hall for that permeable pavement, and my understanding is the city sealed it. And this was just brought up a few meetings ago, and you can't seal permeable paving. I don't know what the EPA thinks of that, but the effectiveness of that project's nil because nothing can get through it
Did that
anymore.
happen? Did they see
I'm
it?
unaware of that. I don't know that. I
Yes,
know that-
Councilman Carol Lesnar said, yes, we seal it, and that was maybe 2 months back.
I know they crack sealed it, but I don't know about the other.
No, they sealed the entire surface,
Again, I'm not aware of that.
so it's not permeable anymore.
Kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Sure did.
What was the cost of that project?
I don't know off the top of my head.
It was a ton of money.
But are
It
you
was a
sure-
huge amount of money the EPA funded. That was done in conjunction with previous engineer, Mark Papke.
Are you sure she wasn't referring to the crack ceiling that?
No, there's no cracks in the parking lot. It's continuous asphalt. It's been sealed.
It's crack sealed, but I don't know about the other.
Yeah. All right, so Seven Hills lost one of its largest employers, Longboat, to neighboring Independence, but since then has replaced the business with 4 or 5 other new ones. So what's Seven Hills doing to make itself attractive to new business? What have you guys changed or done to entice businesses to come to Seven Hills? Wanna start
Aye.
with-
This is a bigger question than just that, so if you don't mind, can I think that we can develop ourselves out of the $700,000 that we know that we have to come up with. There's a lot of activity right now along Rockside Road. We're talking to developers every week who are interested in coming to Seven Hills, particularly that 60 or 70 acres I'm sure you're aware of on Rockside next to the City of Independence. There's a lot of activity there. We have on every occasion that we've had the opportunity, again, we don't have an economic development director. It's myself and council people and our finance director. There is no economic development director in Seven Hills. Probably something we need to look at. especially if Rockside Road takes off. We try to establish relationships with businesses around us so that they know that we are available in the event that they are looking. And we've been very successful at attracting whatever small amount of business we have accommodations for to the city of Seven Hills. I think arguably the Genesis building, which is the one you're referring to, is probably the nicest building on Rockside Road. Mahogany conference rooms, a big aquarium in the basement. I mean, if you go in there, it's a beautiful facility. However, it is more expensive to do business in Seven Hills than in Independence by about $1 a square foot. If you took a building in Seven Hills and put that same building in Independence, because of our tax structure, it's $1 a square foot more to do business in our community than it is in the city of Independence. So, knowing this, the developers come to us, the businesses come to us, and the first thing they're asking for is an abatement. We are considering Independence. We're considering Broadview Heights, Brooklyn Heights. We're interested in Seven Hills, but we need to talk about some return on our investment. Well, in certain cases we can give abatements, and in certain cases we cannot. The latest large business we just brought into town is a large architectural firm, but because they were coming from the city of Cleveland, we have a no poaching agreement with the city of Cleveland, so that prohibits us from giving them an abatement. So what we did is we talked to our attorneys. We have our attorneys are squires, spoke with them. Is there some other way that we could make the numbers work so that we could bring this business in without violating that agreement? And they came up with the idea of a low-interest loan. So in effect, what we're doing is we're loaning money to the owner of the building to build out the space for this architectural firm, roughly about, I forget the exact number, it's about $300,000, but we're told that the return on that investment will be far more money than what we're actually loaning to them. It's a forgivable, low-interest loan. So we're always, again, I'm not trying to brag, but we're always trying to be creative and trying to think outside of the box to find ways to.
So this firm came as a result of that?
Yes.
What's the name of the firm?
Don't hold me to this. I believe it's KA Architecture.
And they, how many people they employ?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I wouldn't want to guess, but they're also talking about expanding. They're actually taking the same space that Longbow was previously in. When we brought Anthem in, they actually took a different space. So whatever, I don't want to guess and be proven wrong, but it's a very substantial firm.
And the reason, because you have slightly higher taxes, it's more expensive, a dollar more expensive there than in Independence?
Per square foot.
Per
yes.
square foot. So
annually.
what tax would you, if you wanted to get in line with Independence, what tax would you have to lower?
We don't have that choice. Roughly 2/3 of the regular property tax payment that a building owner pays goes to the schools. Roughly 25% goes to the county and other governmental agencies. Maybe 12 cents on the dollar actually goes to the city, not counting special assessments. So we really don't have an opportunity to reduce the tax structure because such a large proportion of it goes to the schools.
It's the property tax.
It's the property
And
tax.
You can't lower the property tax because of the other obligations.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Jaros, did you have any thoughts on bringing?
Yeah, the loan that the mayor's talking about, the low interest loan, if I'm not mistaken from reading the document, it says that up to $40,000 a year can be forgiven or be deducted from the principal amount on that loan. So in the final analysis, we're lending out $300,000. We can only hope to recover $100,000 of it because actually money that would have come to the city in taxes is being forgiven against the loan.
But again, the amount of income taxes we're going to be receiving far exceeds that loan.
The net, right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
so you're actually giving them $100,000 they're never going to have to pay back.
How much will their employees bring in?
That's I would prefer not to get into that. There's a big controversy in our town now. I wouldn't get into that.
Well, this is the place for controversy.
I know it is. Well, I would ask you if you'd care to get a hard number to speak to the finance director and allow them to provide you with whatever figure they can provide. I wouldn't want to hazard a guess. As you're probably aware, there's a controversy in our town with one of our council people who Yeah, I prefer
If you
not to
ask
go
that finance, you ask our finance director for that number, there will be an anonymous complaint. You'll probably get arrested like Councilman Traffus did.
But you're saying it's over $300,000?
Yes. Yes.
So let's dial back to a moment. A council person got arrested for asking a question.
For asking about finances relative to Longbow, actually.
Can you explain why somebody would be arrested for that?
I believe it's a city ordinance that has to do with releasing
Information obtained and their election of duty were the two charges.
Okay, so he wasn't
Releasing-
simply asking a question. He was,
releasing information that's obtained through the taxation process.
okay.
That's supposed to be illegal.
So he was arrested for violating that.
Supposedly, allegedly violating that ordinance somehow.
Okay. You know, in your candidate questionnaire, Mayor, you referred to constant self-defeating council bickering. What are you talking about specifically there?
Well, you write the articles, and you've been at the meetings. You have observed what goes on in our meetings. We need to bring more decorum into that room. Everywhere I go, I'm asked, what in the world is going on in Seven Hills? Why are things, and I'll be kind, why are things so dramatic in that room? My opinion is that we have folks who are maybe a little bit more concerned about their own legacy than what's good for the city. I'll just leave it at that.
Council folks, in other words.
Yes.
And I completely disagree with needing more decorum. This government, this administration, and this council have been flying under resident radar for years. And questions are asked. If somebody doesn't like the question, you're likely to get a response that is going to be somewhat heated. And these are how the exchanges happen. We have residents trying to ask a question in a meeting. They're refused, not allowed to do that, escorted from the meeting by a policeman. Residents have a right to know. They have a need to know. Residents should have known about the deer package whenever the mayor got it because it's such a hot button issue. But we don't. We tell what we do as our government tells us what they want us to know when they want us to know it. And that warms up meetings. It's no two ways about it. We don't need more decorum. We need better information.
So you're saying the decorum issue is a reflection of the city not answering questions of the citizens who asked them?
Not answering questions or not completely relaying information, and then the deal snowballs into the circuses that are evident there. I've been part of them. I ask questions. They don't like when I ask the questions. I get head-to-head with somebody, and I won't back down. I ask a question. I want an answer. They're our representatives. We don't really care what their opinions are. At a recent town hall meeting, we heard Councilman Bart get up and say he and the mayor decided that the Rockside Road development is going to only have owner-occupied properties. I personally don't care what the mayor's and Mr. Bart's opinion is. I want to know what the residents' opinion is, and plenty of residents attended that meeting that were very vocal. They don't want apartments there. They just don't want apartments, period. So respectfully, the opinion's good, but an opinion based without a resident poll is worthless.
Did the mayor and the council want to put apartments there?
No.
You said the owner-operated businesses is what they wanted.
No, owner-owned residences. If I said owner-operated businesses, that was wrong.
Owner-owned residences.
Correct.
Okay, so in other words, single-family homes as opposed to apartments.
Single-family homes are some derivation of them.
Okay, and that sounds like what the citizens want as well, right?
The citizens want owned homes. The original rollout of the Project Next marketing strategy included apartments, condominiums, business, all kinds of stuff. There was this big vision, which residents, quite frankly, are looking at it tongue-in-cheek. They had a big vision once before. It fell on its face. We wound up with blight because of abandoned properties. And as far as this development being the salvation of Seven Hills, the mayor said at a meeting in the beginning of the year, town hall meeting, that we didn't want to go into 2006 without some way to have more income into the city. If they put a shovel to the property, the 60 acres he talked about, at the Seven Hills Independence border, if they put a shovel to the property today, we won't have increased income from that project time enough to keep us from default. And that's the truth. There's no way to do it. You can't come fast enough. If they start digging today, we're in trouble in 2006. You said that at your town hall meeting.
Well, this is 2015.
2016.
So
Well-
what's your response?
Well, again, I'm trying to be kind. This default thing is a red herring. When I came into office, our general fund balance was about $1.5 million, and we had about $260,000 in something we call the bond retirement fund, which is dedicated toward the paying down of debt. I have since tripled our cash reserves that's about $1.8 million total. I've since tripled our cash reserves to $5.6 million. For this year, we've got $3.9 million in our general fund, which, by the way, is in excess of some larger, more affluent communities around us. And we brought our bond retirement fund at the beginning of the year up to $1.6 million. The $700,000 that's been bandied about in debt payments was paid out of that bond retirement fund, exactly the purpose for which that money was deposited. As you probably know, when you deposit money into a certain fund, it can only be used for a specific purpose. So out of that 1.6, we now have about $900,000 left. We have more money going into that bond retirement fund in 2015. We're going to be fine for the next few years. This default claim it's a disservice to the residents to be making these false claims. We are in far better financial shape, especially with respect to our cash reserves, than some of the other cities around us. So I don't know where he gets this from. I guess it's a good soundbite.
And he also said that the reason that council was a little bit frisky and lacked decorum is because they're not getting enough information. Is that
I can only speak for myself. I have 2 regularly scheduled meetings each month where anybody can come into the rec center and meet with me for several hours. I have office hours open every Monday night, so if somebody wants to make an appointment and come in to speak with me, they're free to do so. I think the incident that Mr. Jaros is referring to was actually witnessed by Maura. It was more than just what he's saying. The gentleman got up out of order, was trying to speak while counsel was actually taking a roll call to adjourn. He refused to comply. A police officer very gently came over and explained to him, you've been ruled out of order, please sit down. He didn't agree in doing so, and it turned into this big thing. But again, Maura was there to see it.
And the gentleman was confused because the week before, the council agenda allowed residents to speak last. He wasn't up. This guy's 87 years old. He's a veteran of 2 wars. It's
Again.
Russ Snyder. He's a great guy. He got up and asked a question because he thought that was his point, and Council President Ernst decided that she couldn't accommodate that resident. She couldn't give us his few minutes to say whatever he had to say, ask whatever he had to ask, and instead we had to put a cop on him. That's ridiculous.
Well, again, I can't.
The guy's been there 40 years. He deserves some consideration in addressing his representatives.
I don't run the council meetings, but the voting meetings are very formal. There are certain agenda that's followed. There are certain rules that apply, and unfortunately, the gentleman refused to comport. So there it is.
Yeah, and just to make sure I understood that there was a council person that was charged with, is that right?
That's correct. Councilman Matt Trafe is council at large.
Okay, and that had to do with he was giving away information that he had received from tax receipts that by law he was not supposed to. Is that
Allegedly let out information that shouldn't have been let out according to Seven Hills ordinance is my understanding. And this happened way back in January of this year, I believe. And the last person I heard talk about this was the mayor, who talked about it from the council dais and said there was some kind of possible violation of Ohio law in it. We didn't hear anything about it till we got close to the election, and then an anonymous tipster winds up with Traffus getting arrested. And the information was out in the public domain courtesy of independent city council minutes before this thing was even brought up at City Hall.
I haven't followed it that closely, but there's been an allegation out there that I was the anonymous tipster, and I made sure that as soon as I heard that, I put a statement out that it was not I who made this report. I'm an attorney. I fully understand that I could be potentially a witness in this case, and I could be asked that question under oath. I put that statement out with that understanding, knowing that if I'm ever asked that question, I will be consistent because that's the truth. I was not the person who made that anonymous report. That's what he's alluding to.
You're an attorney. You were in private practice. You now work for the Medina County Prosecutor's Office. Is that right?
No, I'm still in private practice.
Okay, I'm confusing with somebody else. Then. The other thing I want to ask you on your, I think it was you. You're the one whose father had some bit parts in Hollywood.
Yes.
What was that about?
During the Depression, he went to Hollywood and had some small roles. Actually, this was in silent films. Had some small roles in silent films when the Depression. This was about 1927, maybe, just during the transition between silent and talkies. The Depression hit, and he had to come back to Ohio and support the family. So that was the end of his movie career.
What movies?
There was one called The Peanut Vendor that he used to talk about. He played a Mexican bystander in some scene where the peanut vendor is selling his peanuts. This is 1920. I've never seen the movie.
It's amusing because I'm assuming from your last name that you're of Italian derivation.
Yes.
So they have somebody of Italian derivation playing it, somebody of Mexican derivation.
I suppose. I don't know. This is 1927. I have no idea.
Politically correct back then.
I don't know.
Less decorum.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and wrap it up? We'll give each of you just 2 minutes to give your last statement on why you should be mayor. And since we started with the mayor, Mr. Jaros, you go first.
All right. Thank you. I believe a whole lot of the people that actually built the city of Seven Hills are still there. Like I said, I have family there that's 60 years. When we went through the John Glenn rezoning episode, I got to meet a lot of people that live in Ward 1, and a lot of them are owning their houses 40, 45 years. A lot of the good people, the good stock, the people that built this wonderful little bedroom neighborhood are still there. The city externally, when you look at our roads, when you look at unkempt features like Broadview Streetscape, it looks like we're falling apart. We're not. We're not falling apart. And the building blocks that built that city are still there. The good, hardworking, blue collars that put Seven Hills on the map are still there. I think they feel betrayed. I think they feel their trust in the city hall has been used against them, and I think they would be willing to participate in returning to the city to what it was way back when they bought their houses. And I think if faith can be restored in City Hall, there's none now. The last police levy went down by a 2-to-1 margin. If you can just show people that you're not squandering their money, that you really have their best interest in mind instead of personal agendas for whatever reason, I think the residents will participate. I think they'll come up with the money that we need to do, but we have to ask them. We spent $700,000 more this year than we're going to take in. Nothing's been done about bringing revenue in. Next year we'll repeat. We're going to spend $700,000 more again. I don't see anything that stops that. And somewhere along the line, once you have it down to where we're spending what we need to spend, not what we want to spend, not building police stations or new service departments or any of that nonsense, just hunker down, do the work, say, here we are, folks. If we want to stay Seven Hills, we don't want to turn into Parma, this is what we need. But you have to ask them for the money. My opponent said we're going to spend more money than we're going to take in by $700,000. He's come up with no measure to increase revenues. And I think we need to just get everybody back together, get them all on the same page, say, yes, we want to stay Seven Hills. You people know how to work. We need you to work, and we need you to work with us. And I think that'll do it.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Jaros. Mayor?
Thank you. I think what I just heard Mr. Jaros say is that we are not going to be defaulting next year, so I thank you for backing off of that false claim. The money that you're referring to was actually spent in prior years. When we pulled it out of the general fund and put it into the bond retirement fund, it can only then be applied to the payment of debt. So yes, it was disgorged this year, but it had effectively already been spent in prior years. Since I came into office, we have reduced staffing throughout the city. We're running the city, as I said, without an economic development director, without an HR person. We have staff performing multiple functions, not part of their regular assigned duties. We've been very, very conservative in how we shepherd our money. I've reduced the annual budget from about 10 million or so to the mid-8, about 15% reduction. This is all after our revenues, and you're correct, our revenues are flat. When I came into office, we were down about 35%. But for this year, we are budgeted to be flat in our general fund. Going forward, we need to continue with what we are doing to enhance the revenue and ability to attract outside development. If we can develop this Rockside area, that will be sufficient to bring us through the next few years. The money that we would derive from that will be sufficient to keep us flat. Are there other issues that have to be addressed? Yes, certainly. But we have a plan. We're implementing it. We have a track record. And going forward, I feel very confident that we're certainly not going to go into default. And we will have the city turned around in the next 4 years.
Do you balance your budgets?
Do I?
No, I mean, does the city balance its budget?
Again, this is the point that Mr. Jaros is making. He's saying that we spent $700,000 more than we're taking in.
No, I know, but just, I mean, are you able to do it?
Yes. So, yeah. We're never going to get to the point where there's not enough revenue coming in to cover debt. That's always going to happen. There's never going to be a default. But when we're in a position where the police are down, the service department is down, running the rec center with only 2 full-time people, we don't have full-time staff throughout the city, at City Hall, there are no more cuts to be made. Yes, we could take a look at combining some of the things as we have done. SALT Consortium, we contract out our dispatching services. We don't have a jail, we contract out our jail. All of these are money-saving measures. Our building department is apparently one of the things they keep focusing on. The net cost to the city is about $150,000 for the building department.
Contracting out of dispatch services and the jail, did that happen under your administration, or was that prior?
No, I can't take credit for that, but we've continued that during my administration, yes.
The $700,000 that was spent, you're spending in excess of what you're going to take in. And you have come up with nothing to increase revenues for next year, and we have to assume that next year's budget will be $700,000 more than we take in again. How is that good? How's that good financial position?
Mr.
I don't
Jaros,
understand.
I can only say to you that it's great to have criticisms, but I have yet to hear one positive proposal from you.
I'm saying that you, as the leader of the city, the CEO, the COO, whatever, you're coming to council. I know you have no money. The mayor has no money. I don't know if people realize this or not. Council gives them the money. So you come to council at the beginning of this year, and you say, here's my budget, guys, and guess what? It's going to spend $700,000 more than we're going to take in.
But you're failing to recognize that money has effectively been spent in prior years by devoting it to the bond retirement fund. You're not recognizing that. That money doesn't.
And you're ignoring the point. You're spending $700,000 more than you take in. I haven't seen you come to council with anything that says this is how we can offset that. We need this. We need something to get us this extra money.
Does the budget balance with that $700,000 expenditure?
Yes.
Will it balance next year? Will you have that $700,000 expenditure next year? Will the budget balance?
Yes.
And you're spending future funds to balance it. That money was put there for paying back the debt that bond council in 2011, and you were part of this, in 2011, George K. Baum or whoever at your town hall, you said they're a great firm. Granted. At that same presentation, at that same restructuring of the debt, one of the Baum people said, you got a problem. They said that to council, to you, to everybody. You got a problem, meaning you don't have enough income to cover what you're doing here. And I haven't seen anything
again,
that's been done to offset that.
Criticism is fine, and I don't disparage your right to criticize, but give me one proposal to do something different.
I think it's your job to give a proposal
All right.
to City Council on how you're going to cover spending $700,000 more than you took in last year. You said you've cut everything, so next year we have to assume you're going to spend $700,000 more than you're going to take in again, unless we get some fantastic windfall from the Rockside Road development, which is unrealistic, and it's just a flat lie. You're not going to get that kind of money out of there.
But again, you're ignoring the $900,000 plus that's already been set aside for debt payment. Doesn't that count?
Let's not talk about the set-asides. You have this fund, you have that fund, you have this fund. The bottom line, and where I need to focus and where residents are focused, is that you are spending more than you're taking in by almost $1 million. It's $700,000
All right. And what would you
That's
cut?
why they defeated the police
Just
levy.
one question. So this money is coming out of a bond retirement fund, correct?
Yes.
Was it used to retire debt?
Yes.
So isn't that what it's there for?
It was used to bolster the general fund's lack of funds. It doesn't matter where it went. You're taking out of one pocket, putting it in another. You're spending $700,000 more than you're taking in, with no prospects to do anything different, and you haven't asked for anything different.
That money was set aside in prior years for exactly that purpose, knowing that we would be here today.
Okay, let's forget the money that's set aside. Let's forget which
No, I'm
pocket
not
the
gonna-
money's in. Well,
I'm
you
not
need
gonna
to
forget that money
You need to
because
focus
it's there.
on what's going to take us
Okay.
to default.
Okay.
We can't spend more than we
Are we
take
going to
in.
default in 2016? Again, are we back to that?
No, but you said in 2016 we're going to be in trouble. Last year, this is at your town hall meeting. It's a video. You can watch the video on Seven Hills
I said we
Council
need to
Watch
start
on YouTube.
addressing problems in 2016. That's for sure. But we do have enough money set aside to cover debt in this coming year without having to dip into the general fund.
In this coming year.
Of
And then
course.
2017, how are we doing? Because
I
the
don't- you tell
future
me.
funds
You
are almost
apparently
gone.
think-
No,
you
it's not my
apparently
job. That's your job.
Well, I thank you. I'll accept the job then.
Well, give the answer. If 2016,
I believe-
we're in danger
I
in
believe-
2016.
I believe that we're going to be able to develop ourselves out of it. Before we do anything more to go back to vote, you're correct. The voters have said they don't want us to come to them for more tax money. I believe that with more development on Rockside Road, that $700,000 can be found.
And
The voters,
This obligation of $700,000 a year is out over what period of time?
this isn't an obligation. This was simply an overspending.
Please, I just.
Yeah, it goes, it's primarily related to the recreation center. The recreation center represents something like maybe approaching 40% of our total debt. It was built incorrectly, all kinds of construction issues. We had to pull the roof off. We had to rebuild the roof. We had to shut it down for a period of time. We had to borrow that money to fix that roof. So this false charge about overspending, it's just so frustrating to have that constantly thrown when you very well know that the Traffus administration messed up that rec center. And now we are paying consequences for that in the coming years, the future years. About 40%, that rec center alone represents a $20 million hit to the city. And I have the numbers to back that up.
That's $20 million per year?
No, $20 million total known debt until the existing debt is paid down.
That's at $700,000 a year.
Part of it, not all of it. That's about 40%. I have the numbers here. That's about 40% of our total debt. So I can provide that to you if you're interested. I had the finance department go through it. Now, Mr. Jaros loves to constantly throw around these claims, but he refuses to acknowledge that the rec center itself is our biggest problem financially. I had the finance department, I'll give one to you, Mr. Jaros. Our finance department went through the numbers. I don't know who to hand it to, but it's about a $20 million impact to the city. Now, for some reason, that never comes up. We keep hearing about overspending and this bogus claim about default, but yet there's a refusal to acknowledge that we are facing a $20 million problem with that rec center.
And this is money that's already been spent to.
Or
to
will
fix
be
it.
spent once we pay down the debt. Over the life of the debt, it's about a $20 million hit to the city.
So your plan here, so the $700,000 is to retire debt, including the rec center and other debt.
In future years.
And that's an annual cost that we can anticipate will keep occurring for a while.
And most of that is attributable to cuts from Columbus. Had we not sustained those cuts from Columbus, I understand some of the communities around us are in the multiple millions of dollars. We were fortunate that it's only about a $700,000.
That kicked in what year?
It's been over a period of time. I forget exactly when the estate tax was eliminated. That's part of it. The state and local government fund is also part of it.
This, how many years going forward do you see?
The debt on the rec center probably goes to about 2028 that we know about thus far. And there's still a lot of construction.
Some of that 700,000 will go as far out as 2028.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the fact is that the city could have covered that without dipping into the bond fund in prior years, and that because of state cuts, you had to dip more
Yes.
money to the bond fund.
We took a real heavy hit with the cuts from Columbus.
And your expectation to prevent needing to go back to the general fund to subsidize these debt payments is that development will,
In part.
in part.
Because we have also done some other things to continue pouring money into that bond retirement fund.
Okay, I see.
For example, we sold our cell phone tower revenue. We're getting, I think this year, about $430,000. So there are other things. This is all part of a mosaic, but it's there. Okay.
Sold your revenue?
We could not sell the leases. We were
Oh.
prohibited from selling the leases, so we sold the revenue stream. Yeah, we were prohibited by the lease from actually selling the leasing rights.
They sold $2 million worth of anticipated revenue for $1.5 million, and that's part of the $433,000 is the last payment that's coming next year that he's talking about.
Also based on a recommendation.
So we mortgaged the
from
kids'
experts.
college
So that's
fund.
about 25% interest.
Mm.
Right. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, now you hear about future funds and everything else, but yeah, we gave up $500,000.
So there's one other kind of burning question that I have. Are there really 7 hills and 7 hills?
That is an ongoing mystery. I think, if I can guess, I think it's related to a reference to the 7 Hills of Rome.
So I figured.
Yeah, because the city seal has the olive, whatever the emperors were, I don't know,
Yeah.
and the words, the number 7 in 7 Hills is in Roman numerals. I believe it's a reference to the 7 Hills of Rome.
But there are, nobody has
No,
pointed out
no,
or
no.
identified 7 actual
You don't count them, no.
physical hills.
It is
No,
it is a hilly place though. Yeah.
We just hope to get up them in the winter and not slide down in the winter and stuff like that.
We have some of the best snow plowing records around here. TV Channel 3 selected us and Beechwood as the 2 best streets for snow plowing in some major snowstorm that we had last
You're
year.
doing a good job cleaning
Yes.
the
They
streets.
do good.
Yes, we
I
do.
don't know about 7 Hills, but I live very close to Beechwood, and they are good.
Yeah, we were selected along with Beechwood as the 2 best communities in the area. We do a good job with snow plowing.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
Yeah,
think so.
Service Director Jack Moga is very responsive. You can call him up and say, hey, they're sliding down Broadview Road Hill, you better get there. And Jack does it. Jack's
We
a
do
good guy.
Broadview Road Hill even though it's in Parma. It's the hill itself is entirely in the city of Parma, but we do it anyway for safety reasons.
Says your residents probably.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the boundary runs right down the middle of Broadview Road if you're familiar, until you get to that hill, and then as the road deviates to the northwest, the boundary continues north, but the whole roadway is in Parma at that point.